Here's an in-depth tutorial for your low bar or your powerlifting competition squats. The key technique, cues, and execution principles of this low bar squat, they're gonna carry over to most of your barbell squat variations out there. So even if you're not doing low bar squats in your current program at the moment, you're still gonna get a ton of value from this. My goal by the end of this video is to make sure that you know the basics and the fundamentals of creating a really strong squat. And that's all gonna start with you nailing your start position. Because if you don't get that right straight away, you're gonna be leaking a lot of power through all of your sets and your reps, which is basically just gonna mean you're gonna be working a lot harder than you need to be. And it could also result in you just failing reps and just not lifting as efficiently as you could be. This will all begin with your start position and how you're gripping the bar. So grip the bar about shoulder width or just a little bit outside shoulder width apart. Some of you might be a little bit more narrow or a little bit wider than this. Here's gonna be a few things to consider when choosing your grip width. The wider you go, the easier it's gonna be on your shoulder mobility, but this can also result in less tightness through the upper back. And then also being too narrow can feel super tight and locked in, but it's not actually gonna allow you to actively create and maintain that tightness throughout your set. So you wanna find a grip that works for your shoulder mobility, but also allows you to create lots of upper back tightness, which we're gonna go through in a second. When it comes to gripping the bar, you have a few options. You can go over full grip, a thumbless grip, or gripping it to where your thumb and pinky, maybe even your ring finger is off the bar as well. Basically, a good way to look at it is the less fingers you have around the bar, the less shoulder mobility it will require, but it will also be a bit harder and requires a bit more practice to create that upper back tension and tightness which you want for your squats. So find what feels strongest for you, but for most of you, I will just be recommending you go full hand around the bar. It is worth noting though that if you are using or trialing one of the other grips and you are competing in a powerlifting competition, is to check the rule books, as some federations do require you to go with a full hand around the bar. Some are a bit more flexible, but just double check the rule books before you sign up to any competitions. So for the bar position on your low bar squats, we want the bar to be resting just below your traps, basically anything lower than a high bar squat. A great starting point is going to be resting on your rear delts or the back of your shoulders. So now to get into that setup, what you want to do, grab the bar in your grip, jam yourself up into the bar, resting the bar in your low bar position. From here, a good few cues to think about to create and maintain that tension through the upper back. One is to think about actively squeezing your shoulder blades together to create a shelf for that bar to rest on, while also thinking about squeezing your elbows into your ribs or into your lats. And that's gonna help you maintain that throughout the whole of your squats. Before you unrack and do your walkout, we do need to touch on bracing and your rib cage position just a little bit more. So what we're gonna go through now, this is gonna apply to any squat or even deadlift variation that you do. You need to find a stacked rib cage position, so where your ribs come down with a slightly tucked pelvis. From here, you slowly inhale, not too aggressively to where you could lose this position. Once you've breathed in fully and you're maintaining this stacked rib cage position, you now squat. This is going to create a lot of intra-abdominal pressure, which will help you transfer a lot of force up into the bar from a really strong and also safe position. So if this all sounds really new to you and you're not too sure how to find that rib cage and pelvic position, a few things that you can do, there's a few drills. One would be doing some dead bugs. You could even do a goblet squat where you're holding a plate or a dumbbell out in front of you. Those small movements there are gonna force you to get into that position where your pelvis is slightly tucked under with those ribs down. Another thing you can do as a bit of a warm-up is a breathing drill to where you take a big inhale in and then you force all that air out. And then as you exhale, that's gonna force your ribs and pelvis into that position that we want. And then you wanna recreate that position and feeling when you get to your barbell squats or even deadlifts as well. This would also be where you can use a lifting belt to help create more intra-abdominal pressure, but I'm not gonna go too much into that today as that's gonna be a whole nother video in itself. So now you found your start position and you're bracing, we now need to nail your walkout. Because if you don't get this right, that could result in you losing that position or that brace and just kind of defeats the whole purpose of what you've worked so hard to create already. So you wanna start with your feet together, slowly breathe in, stand straight up, and then the bar should clear the rack. Now, really important, let that weight settle. If it doesn't feel right, re-rack and reset and then go again. Now for the walkout, you wanna take one small step straight back, another step to set your stance, and then that third step is just there to readjust and get into your squat stance. Super important is only to do those 3 steps, because if you walk out any further than that, that's gonna be an extra chance for you to lose your position, your brace, and it's just gonna be wasted energy, especially when you have some max weights on there as well. Stance is gonna be very individual. A great place to start though is gonna be slightly wider than hip width apart, all the way to shoulder width apart, with the toes slightly angled out. So now for the descent, I like to keep this really simple as it often gets overcomplicated with lots of different cues and all that around it. So as long as you can maintain your brace, stay balanced on your feet, so not too much on the toes, not too much on the heels, while controlling that whole way down, then your torso, your knees, and your hips, they will just end up where they need to be in space. Basically, the main takeaway here is that center of mass and balance is going to be king. So keep your balance over your midfoot and let everything else follow. One of the biggest mistakes I see newer lifters make is they try to descend way too quickly and bounce out of the bottom. And look, that can work, but only with a lot of practice and skill behind you. And I'm often only really going to recommend that to very advanced lifters. For now though, and what I recommend to most people is just descend under a good control that allows you to maintain your position and brace and that center of mass that we just spoke about. If you're unsure, then just go slightly slower so you can stay in control. When it comes to depth, whether you're competing in powerlifting or not, a solid target is just below parallel. That's when your hip crease is just lower than the top of your knee. And look, unless you're rehabbing a specific injury, just aim for this depth. And sometimes more range actually isn't always going to be better. So you want to watch out for squatting too low to where you're losing your brace, your center of mass, or your balance, and basically just compensating with a poor position. If you're still struggling to hit your squat depth, then I'd revisit some of the previous points and technique things that I've gone over today, as it will likely be one of those points that is breaking down somewhere. Or it could just be that you need to adjust your squat stance. So take it in a little bit or out a little bit, just to allow you enough room to get into the bottom of your squat while maintaining your position and technique. So final point and takeaway that I want to give you guys is something that I see all the time holding lifters back. They nail every single thing that we've just gone through, but then at the top of every single one of their reps, they're just going straight back into their movement. Even if it's under good control, especially if you've got a lot of weight on your back, just spend 3, 4, 5 seconds at the top between every single one of your reps, and simply slowing that process down a little bit is going to make sure that you feel balanced on your feet, you feel that you're ready for that next rep, and it's going to prepare you mentally and physically for your next rep, especially when you've got some max weights on there as well. So at the top of every single rep, retake your air, brace, feel balanced on your feet, and then descend under control with your tempo. This is going to be a bit of a mental game, especially when you've got some max weights on there or a weight that you've never even touched before, but just simply slowing down a little bit, spending a bit more time at the top of your reps is going to make a huge difference. So the longer that you stick with this and practice everything here that we've gone over, even in your deload weeks and on all of your warm-up sets, the more second nature this is going to become. But the goal here is eventually when you go for a PR or when you step on the platform, is that you don't have to think about any of this. It's just going to come naturally to you. Obviously covered quite a lot here today. So if you do have any questions about anything, then either drop them in the comments or in the caption, I've put my Instagram. So you can go over there and just shoot me a DM and I can chat to you and help you out with anything and any questions that you guys do have.